Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you all are enjoying your time here at the Testing Talks conference. Even the environment is quite lively and vibrant, isn't it? Yeah. So before we continue, I'll quickly talk about some of these automation buzzwords. And I believe all of us have heard these buzzwords on one platform or another. For example, everything can be automated. Automation will solve all our problems. Or for example, robots will replace us. We can talk all about these. Uh, but do we actually believe in all these statements, or do they appear to be written by someone who is quite obsessed about automation? Well, I believe automation is a very important aspect in software testing, but this is not absolute. So the way I envision testing is a bit different. So let's take a look at the traffic management system. So how does it work? I mean, we have certain pieces like red lights, which are automated. We have a couple of things like giveaways or rules for the roundabout, or kind of driving on the left side of the road, which are manual. And then we have certain protocols. For example, what if there is a road emergency and stuff like that. So we can see that in order to have an effective traffic management system, we are leveraging automation, manual steps, practices, and protocol. And I believe testing is not even untouched from this. In order to have effective software testing for any product, we need to leverage automation testing, manual testing processes, and practices. With that, I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Alok Sharma, and I lead the Testing Center of Excellence Strategy in Australia for Nagarro. My experience span across QA consulting, designing automation test strategies, and implementing those strategies. And trust me, it has been a learning experience of last 2 decades, and I still keep on learning, and I believe it will not end till the time I retire. But now I'll quickly talk about the topic that I have picked. As you can see, it is beyond buzzwords, evolution of web automation. So we will actually isolate ourselves from the buzzwords that we saw on the first screen, and we will talk about the evolution of web automation. Though we will start with the evolution of testing, or how it evolved over the years of over the last 50 or 70 years. But now if we talk about evolution, what are we trying to achieve from the evolution? Why do we see new web automation tools emerging every few months or after a year? Well, in order to understand that, I will talk about a machine, which is AK-47. Trust me, I don't love war, or I'm not a warmonger. But maybe not on the good lines, but we all have heard of this machine, which was invented in 1947 and is still relevant today as is. But what are the characteristics that have kept this machine relevant till today? And how many machines do we know that were invented in maybe 1960s or 70s and are used as is in their original shape today? No. There is hardly any, because they have been touched by the journey of evolution. So some of the characteristics of AK-47 are: it is simple to operate, it has operational practical range, it is quick to train personnel on it and attain operational efficiency, and it is simple to assemble, disassemble, and clean it, and it is reliable under extreme conditions. I mean, if we talk about history, during the Vietnam War, Americans were using their M16s. And there are incidences where the American soldiers were trying to get hold of enemies' AK-47 because they felt more comfortable operating those machines. So if you ask me to define AK-47 in 2 words, they are simple and effective. So AK-47 is simple and effective, and I believe throughout the journey of evolution of technology, what we are trying to achieve is simplicity and effectiveness. Right. So now I'll take you all back in time in 1950s, and let's see how testing appeared at that time. Well, in 1950s, testing wasn't recognized as a discipline. Debugging was the closest to testing. And there was this American scientist, her name was Grace Hopper. Her team found a moth causing a malfunction in the Mark II computer. And that's how we got our favorite term bug in 1947. And the testing didn't change till 1970s. In 1970, Dr. Winston Royce introduced waterfall model, and that was the time when structured phases of testing began to appear. And this was the time when Glenford Myers wrote the first comprehensive book on testing called The Art of Software Testing. And by this time, engineers had realized the importance of software testing in the software life cycle. And it continued this way. In 1980s, even more formal disciplines of testing like black box and white box testing were introduced. And at this time, IEEE also started to develop standards for software testing. Well, but till this time, web was not invented. The web was invented in 1990 by Tim Berners-Lee, who was a British scientist. And why he did that? He did that to meet the demand for automated information sharing among scientists who were working at different universities and institutions globally. And what was the URL of the first website of the world? It was info.cern.ch. And the first browser itself was called World Wide Web, which was later renamed as Nexus. So this was the era, like from 1990 to 2000, when we saw rapid development of internet infrastructure and browsers as well. In 1993, Mosaic browser was introduced. 1994, Netscape Navigator was introduced. But it all changed in 1995 when Microsoft launched Windows 95, which had Internet Explorer bundled along with it. So this was the time that accelerated the web adoption among the masses. And by this time, e-commerce platforms like Amazon and eBay had also emerged. Well, by this time, automation was in place and relying primarily on shell scripts and Perl to simulate user actions. But by the time we reached year 2000, complexity of web applications increased significantly, and there was an increasing need for sophisticated testing tools. Now, while talking about testing tools, I will keep focused on open source tools for web automation. So in 2004, Jason Huggins, who was an engineer at ThoughtWorks, he was developing a website and he had to run some tests repeatedly. He didn't want to do that. So he developed a JavaScript library called JavaScript Test Runner. So later he renamed it to Selenium, taking a dig at a competitor which is Mercury Interactive, because Selenium is considered to counteract the poisonous effects of mercury. Now, what was the issue with Selenium RC? The issue with Selenium RC was it used a proxy server to communicate with the browsers. But there were a couple of good things that Huggins did. He kept Selenium open source so that a larger community of developers can contribute and improve this tool. So in 2006, Selenium WebDriver was introduced, which removed the dependency on the proxy server. But again, till this time, we were executing all the tests sequentially, and there was a need for parallel execution in order to improve the speed of execution. So in 2008, Selenium Grid was introduced, which facilitated and allowed the users to execute tests in parallel. I would say like Selenium was a very good tool at that time. It supported multiple programming languages, multiple platforms for automation, and it was adopted by some very large organizations for automation, which made it more reliant and credible tool, right? But if we talk about some of the characteristics that actually made it quite popular, they were its flexibility, robust features, and strong community support. But as we know, nobody is untouched from the technology evolution. By the time we reached 2010, after that we did see JavaScript-based frameworks emerging and being the top choice for web development, like Angular or React. So in 2013, Protractor was launched. So all these tools, they were primarily wrappers around Selenium, and they were kind of introduced to address very specific needs. For example, Protractor was designed specifically for AngularJS applications. It had native support for Angular-specific locators like ng binding, ng repeat, etc. And the USP of Nightwatch, which is the second tool, it was simplicity. Anyone who had experience of working on Selenium in the past, the learning curve for Nightwatch was quite simple and easy. It aimed to reduce the complexity and setup related to automation testing. Well, the third one in this line is WebDriver IO. So WebDriver IO, it has a unique feature of extensibility. It could easily integrated with other libraries that are available in the market, and I believe out of these three, it is the only tool that could do web automation as well as native mobile app automation too. So, however, these tools never enjoyed the same popularity that Selenium did. Selenium was popular for, I think, more than a decade, and even it's a tool of choice for many engineers even today as well, right? However, Protractor was decommissioned in September 2023, I believe, right? So what was the main thing about these? They were wrapper around WebDriver. But they were again continuously being challenged by the rapid development of web automation tools. And what were those tools? Well, they were Cypress, Puppeteer, and the most recent one is Playwright. I met so many people today that have gradually adopted Playwright. And what is the reason? Now, first quickly we'll take a look at Cypress. Cypress promised speed in the beginning. I mean, because it executes the tests inside the browser, so less flaky. Even the setup was quite easy. It was designed completely keeping in mind the automation engineers and their pain areas and things related to setup. For example, many times the people who have worked on Selenium, I believe they understand that if you have a web driver and the web driver is not on your machine, you could not write tests. But tools like Cypress, they brought in the WebKit. So as soon as you set up this tool, it will also install the WebKit, removing any dependency related to browsers, right? So it was quite fast, and it provided a lot of features related to debugging and execution, maybe network call interception and others to the users. Now Puppeteer, it was a tool by Google. It had its own strengths, but limited support for multiple browsers. It just could be used for Chromium-based browsers. And it was important to talk about Puppeteer so that I can talk about Playwright. So Puppeteer was a very good tool, and it was considered as the fastest. Why? Because all the tools that we discussed in the last slide, they were either Selenium based or like Selenium or tools that were wrappers around Selenium, which means they were using HTTP protocol for communication. But tools like Puppeteer, it used WebSocket protocol. Now, many engineers who developed Puppeteer at Google, they joined Microsoft, and they were involved in the development of Playwright. That's why Playwright also used WebSocket protocol. And see, I would say before these tools were introduced, the primary focus of web automation was to automate the functionality. There were many trivial things related to the setup of automation, but the primary intent was to automate what is being tested manually. And what these tools brought on the table, functional automation was already a part of it, viewport testing. Now, because the applications were responsive in nature on mobile, it should be able to kind of test that particular view. Though viewport testing was also part of Selenium, but there are other things. For example, built-in capability to hit API endpoints. Network interception, the ease of doing it. For example, mocking and stubbing responses and requests, etc. Accessibility testing was gaining a lot of popularity, and I believe it is going to be a mandate in certain cases for some website by the governments also. So there is something called WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, right? So these tools either were expected to have built-in capability to test accessibility, or they should have the ability to kind of integrate with some libraries that can facilitate that. Similarly, visual testing, inbuilt assertions, why should we have to kind of rely on some other library for a small thing like assertion, right? Performance testing, specifically the client side of it. So these tools brought a lot of these things as native capabilities or easy integrations to support it. So as we can see, like during last so many decades, like automation has improved and the tools have improved over a period of time. And the most recent tool that is gaining a lot of popularity, and that was evident from my interaction with many people today, that Playwright is gradually becoming the tool of choice, right? But is it only all of us who believe that, or has it been validated by someone? So the answer is yes. There is a platform called Checkly. So Checkly specializes in monitoring the performance and reliability of web applications. And they performed a speed comparison test on tools that are based on Selenium, plus they introduced Puppeteer and Playwright to this experiment. And they made sure that the environment for this test is same. They, I think, gathered the data or results from 1,000 successful sequential executions of the same script. So basically they picked two scripts. One was a script, a demo script, and the other was a script from the Checkly platform itself, which was a bit longer script, like a realistic user journey. And what were the results like? So as you can see, for the demo site, mean execution time for Puppeteer was the least, which means if you have a very small scenario, Puppeteer was even faster than Playwright. But when they picked more realistic user journey, like in case of real life scenarios where we are logging into a website, doing certain actions and checking certain things and then logging out, in those scenarios, Playwright ended up as the fastest tool. But again, I mean, does it mean that using a good tool is enough to ensure that we are doing effective automation? No, I think even there might be people that are still using Selenium and getting good results. There might be people among us who are using Playwright and not seeing that kind of value. So why does that happen? Now I'll quickly talk about this screen, which is bringing a cannon to kill a mosquito. This is my own experience of working with the company. So there I was working as a automation strategist, and we were asked to kind of automate the website and do the API testing as well. So for web automation, we had pretty much finalized that we are going to use Cypress. And I was talking to the head of engineering, and he was asking me like, Alok, what have you finalized for API automation? I said, we are still researching. And he suggested, why don't you use Cypress? Cypress has the ability to hit API endpoints. That way we can train everyone on Cypress, and the same person can do front-end API testing, and even if we have to move people from one team to another, there will be hardly any learning curve. And we'll be able to cover a lot of things quite fast. And I really liked that logic, and we went for it. We picked our first microservice API, and then we started automating it. It was just the third day when I got an error related to installation of WebSocket. And I was scratching my head, why an error related to WebKit installation should matter to me when I'm automating the APIs? Then I realized, no, this wasn't a wise call. Why? Because tools like Playwright or Cypress, they are primarily designed to support front-end automation in the best possible way. I mean, with Cypress, like if you see, you can have the time lapse, even the trace, what was the state of the page before you hit a particular button. And after that, if we are using this tool for API automation, it is just like bringing a cannon to kill a mosquito. So exactly, and there are very similar experiences that I had in the past. And at the same organization, we had a team of developers where we embedded one automation engineer per team. And then a question was asked, like, Alok, how do we manage the code reviews? Who will review the code? I said, it's quite easy. Our automation engineer will write the code. Since we have all the developers apart from him, they will review the code, they will give the comments, everything fixed, merged, happy ending. But just in a week's time, the engineers, automation engineers kept on coming to me. Alok, this guy is giving me weird comments, I didn't like it and all. I was like, what's going on? So I sat with the automation engineer and started reviewing the comments that he was getting. And I again realized that this is again something wrong that we have done. And why is that? I strongly believe that developers should not review the code of automation engineers. And why is that? As a developer, I am programmed to follow dry principle, which is do not repeat yourself. As soon as I'll see the code repetition, I'll be like, you know what, create a function. This is wrong. But when it comes to automation engineers, they are programmed to follow a principle called DAMP, descriptive and meaningful phrases. We are allowed to have some duplicity in order to preserve readability, right? So that was the primary reason that we were seeing a lot of to and fro. And it makes sense also because development code, even if it is complex, it is protected by tests. But tests don't have tests. So we cannot go along that route and do it. So we again had to kind of change that. The next experience, this is again what I have observed in last couple of years, is the target audience. What does it mean? Now, I think we all believe that there is a lot of pressure to ship the products or software to the market as soon as possible. Now, earlier what we used to do traditionally, we will have a Selenium Java framework. We will integrate Cucumber with it, which is another layer on top of our automation tests. It's not a built-in thing. So again, on top of your testing layer, you will be adding feature file steps. And I'm not sure about what have you felt, but many times I was confused in my own steps. Their definitions used to be so close to each other. And again, it's a burden on the framework. And we used to create beautiful reports that are in plain English to serve the business users. I think that need to change. Our target audience need to be developers. Our tests should be kind of very easy. Our frameworks should be lightweight, and they should send the feedback to a developer so that he can quickly see what's going on, provide him as much information as we can so that we can quickly see the fixes, right? How does it matter if it is given when then versus simply a test that says verify that user is able to log in successfully? If it is red, means something has gone wrong. Why do we need to tell him in detail and make our framework so complex that it takes ages for the tests to execute? And the third thing, even I have been a victim of this thing, love for tools. Trust me, when I was working on Cypress, it was my favorite tool. If you'll talk about any other tool, you have some competition there, right? Some rift is coming your way. I'll be on my heels. But I think that is again something that we need to train ourselves to move away from. Because of these changing technological trends, the tools will have to continuously adapt themselves. And if they won't adapt, they will be replaced by new tools, the same way we saw Selenium-based tools being replaced by these tools. So yes, this happened with one of the conversations that we had with a customer here in Australia. I said, Playwright is the best tool. He said, okay, automate everything. I said, no. He said, why? I said, because down the line, 3 years, I might ask you to throw it in the bin. So it is another aspect, because when we fall in love with a tool, we try to cover as much as we can with that tool. I think the area that need urgent attention is the focus on keeping the suite contained. How many times have we removed tests from our suite? Never. So a module is new, it is important to business, it is there, it stays for 10 years, even when the module is very stable. I think as soon as our suite is being increased by one test case, it should be a part of discussion that why this is happening. We should retire test cases in a timely manner. We should add test cases in a timely manner. Especially adding test cases, for example, we have production defects, right? We can see some of those defects. Are they good candidates for automation? It doesn't mean we shouldn't take a blind approach where we will add something to automation suite. It should be challenged all the time. Why do you want to automate it? I remember there was a website I rejected that I will not automate it just because it took 1.5 minutes to log into that website. I said, what are you trying to achieve by automating it? And people didn't like it. He said, why? They were like, no, you are not taking a good approach. I said, no. Every time Playwright was timing out. So if something need to be automated, when I'm manually testing it, it should be flawless. It should be flowing like anything, right? So that's one thing. And you know what? These buzzwords make our life very difficult, especially when some of the people who don't understand things in depth, they use it. Okay, now what happens? Uh, I was working for a company. I mean, consulting has taught me a lot. And I went to the manager, very serious person, and I was hired as an automation consultant. He said, you have to define the strategy. I said, okay, what is the end goal? He said, are you seeing these two people sitting there far away? I said, yes. I want to get rid of them. I said, why? He said, they are manual testers. I mean, again, there is a cultural push for automation. People want to automate everything. Again, sometimes some companies have invested in paid tools. They are called low code, no code. And they believe that, you know what, you don't need to have the coding skills. Even our BA can write automation. That is a very good reason to automate everything. And then the third one is quite interesting, which is excessive automation in agile environments. I mean, agile, why was it introduced? Because the end product was expected to cater to changes, right? If we are expecting that a product will frequently change, okay, there are many, in agile also, I have seen many scenarios. There are some applications that are just dependent on business feedback. If business gives a go ahead, they are okay and likely won't change much. And there are some websites, they go to public and they see the feedback and then they change. But then we hear very good terms like progressive automation, in-sprint automation. I personally have believed, or in my experience, we ended up doing a lot of rework. And when people used to ask me to calculate ROI, I used to be scared that what kind of ROI I will give when the content is changing so much. And again, but no, we have to do automation as much as possible. So again, automation is such a good thing. It is such a good thing. But again, we need to kind of be aware of like how much to do and how much value will it give to us. So again, in the nutshell, if we talk, so there is definitely need for good tools, but again, how we use these tools, what approach do we take, how we make these tools more effective and valuable for us is also an important aspect that need a lot of attention, Again, so manual testing will definitely be there. I know some folks, while I was doing automation, they were domain specialists. And I don't understand how this user journey will go from this point onwards, because I'm tuned to find how this piece of code will work. That is my focus area. I might not be as good in domain as some of the manual testers are. So what should we do? Instead of thinking of eliminating them, shake hands with them and kind of use their power or knowledge in order to expedite or speed up our automation. So I think no one solution is going to take us to the destination, but an inclusive approach which values everything, right? Now, how can I stop without talking about AI? So I'll have to talk about it for a bit, because this is the buzzword again, and people believes that yes, everything will change very recently. But I'll give you an example how AI is helping us, a very real life example. I was visiting my GP one day, and he's kind of a friend of mine. And after we had the consultation, he wanted to show me something. So they were trialing an AI system. Now how this AI system works, there is a mic in the room next to his computer. So as soon as I'll tell the doctor, you know what, doctor, my stomach is hurting, AI will record that and tell the doctor, ask this as the next question, and with 15 medicines next to it. Now, doctor can ask the next question, right, according to AI's input, or he can override it and ask something else. So when things will narrow down, you will end up with last question and one medicine. So he said, this is how AI will improve. I was like, okay, doctor, I know you are a very good doctor. What if a very risky doctor overriding these questions? So yes, again, how we do it is important. Like for example, something like GitHub Copilot. I used it, and my experience was as if somebody is sitting next to me. He's watching me, a real developer, that what are the kind of patterns that I follow. Like it automatically gave me a path of certain folder structure. I manually changed it. No, this is not the one that I'm referring to. Next time it automatically understood. So it is just like someone sitting next to you. I could save realistically somewhere around 20 to 30% of coding effort when I did that. So yes, of course, AI is good and adding value. But in QA, where we are, what are we doing? So right now I see we are trying to automate the automation. What does that mean? Because during the talk, whatever tools I talked about, focus on automating the execution of tests. But now there is an increasing trend where we have the AI capabilities to refine the requirements, create scenarios, tests, test steps. Are they all correct? No, it will definitely take some time before even the AI gets the maturity and keep providing us some more valuable inputs. But this is the trend that we are seeing. Even there are tools that can generate automated code also for the test steps that we introduced. But again, I think it's like some of the people, I see them saying that it'll happen very quickly. But there are many examples that we can talk about where we feel that no, it is not going to happen overnight. And I just picked 3 of those because I heard a lot of talks around AI, so didn't want to delve too much deep into this topic. So for example, complex test scenario design. AI may struggle to understand intricate business logic and user intention behind complex workflows. Like as a human, at any point in time, I might take a turn or do something that might be difficult for AI to perceive. And again, dynamic element handling, where the locators and stuff like that are generated dynamically. I'm not saying AI will not be able to do that. These are just my beliefs that in these cases, it might take some time. These can be challenged on any day. Visual validation. Now again, it may struggle to determine if the subtle visual differences are intentional improvements or actual defects. So yes, so more similar areas or more similar scenarios we can talk about that AI might struggle or take time to attain enough maturity to help us with. That's why definitely humans will be in the loop whenever AI is doing these kind of things. Now we will quickly recap and talk about the takeaways. So evolution is an ongoing quest to achieve simplicity and effectiveness. Technology transformation will drive the future of automation. And third one, consider quality beyond just the perspective of automation. With that, thank you very much, everyone. Okay, now I believe I need to ask a question. So we discussed that, puppeteer and playwright are very closely related because of a communication protocol. What is that protocol? Come over. What? Thank you. Okay. Okay. So one thing that I want to know, I believe like all of us have very diverse experiences, and even today also I met a lot of people which gave me a very different perspective. Does actually someone want to talk about their experience of using AI in automation? Yes, Sarang.
It is difficult to use because in secure environments such as banking, we don't have access to all the AI tools. Very few, such as customized one. So it's not everyone have the luxury to use AI. We still have to do the automation manually.
Yes.
So that's my take. I'm not saying I'm enjoying with AI.
And one more thing, was it only our team that had this issue of code being reviewed by developers, or has anyone else also faced this scenario? Okay, can we have the lady on the last seat, please?
For this, I have a mixed. My
Okay.
experience has been
Yeah.
mixed. It's good and bad. Good in terms of so that we were trying to follow shift left approach for the mobile automation space. So it was easier for me to get some more developers onboarded. First, create the framework and ask them to add, and probably they would come up with a better coding
Inputs.
solution, because of
Nice.
course they were expertise in Android and iOS space. And the other thing is, yes, sometimes there was unnecessary conversation about it should be this way, that's why, it goes into the technical detail of why the framework is this way, that way. So I think the outcome of it was to have another internal meeting within the team, and then we came up with a solution let's do the framework review, whatever the improvements need to be done, but then also get developers onboarded to add the test cases, so that
Nice.
would reduce the
Nice.
effort on the testing team. Yeah.
Right. So we also talked about a bit about accessibility automation. Accessibility automation, if we are using any library, it can just achieve around 55 to 60% of automation, and not 100% automation. Accessibility automation is guaranteed. Can someone talk about some of the libraries that they have used and seen some good results, or anyone involved in accessibility automation?
So we used to use a library called AxLinter, which was basically a linting tool, but for accessibility. So that kind of allowed us to catch issues even before code was merged into master or like the trunk. And that was quite useful as well. And then apart from that, you can run Ax on your live websites as well.
Right, yeah. So we also integrated X with Cypress. I think that is quite good actually, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The linter is quite good. The other, like the actual tool,
Yes.
will only give you like 50%
Okay.
coverage,
Yes.
like not the whole
So
thing.
with linter, what kind of accuracy did you get?
Sorry?
What level of accuracy, I mean in percentage, if you can just talk
It
about?
was quite good in terms of like coding practices and stuff. And like if the build was failing for some reason, like at the start it was failing a lot. But like eventually everyone got into the habit of like writing front end code which was like accessible or like followed WCAG standards. And then it used to highlight if there's something missing. So yeah, quite useful.
Yeah. So again, I mean, there was another experience that I had with one of the companies where their automation suite had more than 9,000 automated tests, and kind of that was quite scary. And I said, how are you maintaining the test data? They said, we have created a database to maintain the test data. And I said, what are you using? Selenium with Ruby. And are you planning to change it? They said, no, we cannot. We have written so much code, so many things, and that never execute. I mean, see, I think front-end tests are always flaky. I have observed that there is always around 10% of flakiness, whatever tool you use. And if you can reduce up to, bring it down to 5%, I mean, the best we have done is 2%. But most reliable are the API tests. But front-end, we could not achieve kind of zero flakiness. I mean, what are your experiences? Anybody want to talk about it? Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, we can call it off.
Does anybody have any final questions for Alok before we close off?
Yes, please go ahead.
My question relates to what's your thought about the code-less automation such as XLQ and autonomous, like the backend probably.
Sorry, I
based
didn't
on
get
AI.
it, sorry.
So what's your thought about codeless automation such as the autonomous or XLQ, which is basically in the behind the scenes the AI,
Yeah. So see, my experience in AI is quite limited. That's why, to be honest, I didn't kept it as a part of my conversation. My overall experience has been primarily around open source automation tools, because most of the companies or projects that I worked with, they were not open to kind of spend on automation tools. And moreover, I always like this flexibility where we have to write code to do things. I felt more in control. Personally, also, I felt like if I'll use a tool that takes me away from coding, I mean, it'll be a skill kill, maybe a personal thing, but that's how I perceived it.
I think in generally AI is a solution, and we're just trying to find the problem, and that's where we are at this point in time with AI in that respect. And you will see a lot of introduction, which will be layering on top of existing tools. That's pretty much how it's going to go. We still need to find a problem for what we're trying to solve.
Yes.
Sorry.
Not a question, but to answer that question, I use both Selenium and XLQ. When I basically used Selenium first, and I was thinking, it's easy to write methods and everything. As you said, I thought like that is much flexible before using XLQ, and then I went to XLQ and used it for 2 years. The tests are pretty fast. Like you can write tests pretty fast, and you can make it run. I mean, that's why these paid tools are for, right? To reduce the time and get most out of it. And then while using XLQ, I thought like Selenium is much better because I can reuse tests wherever it's not that I can't use it in XLQ, but Selenium I thought will be flexible. Then I went back to Selenium. I actually like XLQ better because that's way faster actually. There are like 1 or 2 issues, but yeah. That was my opinion, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. All right.
Any other final questions before we wrap up in here, guys? All good? Amazing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you do automation testing for image.
No, so what kind of automation? So what we have seen is like most of the automation around images is to validate the correctness of image. And the feature that Playwright provided, I really liked it. You don't have to compare the full screen because image is also a selector. So you can just pick that image and validate if that particular image is displaying correctly or not. Apart from that, if you're anticipating some minor changes which are up to certain pixel levels, Playwright does give you the ability to define that kind of precision so that you don't end up with results that are not as expected. Thank you.
Great job. Let's give a round of applause.